I think this is the longest in-depth movie review that I have ever made. No joke, I worked on this essay for a couple of months. Usually when I'm doing one of these reviews, I also start the video giving a small synopsis of the movie, but I think that for the context of this one, I will only give you a little backstory that will be very important moving forward. So, The Killing of a Sacred Deer is the story of Stephen Murphy. He is a surgeon, and after one of his patients die after a surgery, he takes Martin in, the dead man's son, under his wing. The story begins with Stephen taking off a pair of bloody gloves after a surgery. He has a quick chat with Larry, his colleague, and then goes to meet with Martin in a dinner with who he has a very mundane conversation. Martin is apologizing for being late, and he does several times during the conversation. We see how discipline and how doing things the right way is very important to Stephen, so it makes sense that Martin wants to come off as truly sorry for the disrespect of making him wait. As they talk, Martin mentions he was checking out a friend's motorcycle, and Stephen tells him that he hopes they were using helmets before giving him a present. A very nice watch. So basically, Stephen and Martin have some type of close relationship. We move to Stephen's house, where it is shown just how strict life is in his household. The main victim of this is the youngest, Bob. He is told to cut his hair and sit straight, right after his parents tell him that they are not sure to let him go to a party. Stephen reminds Bob that he promised to cut his hair, and Bob says that he will cut it, but right after the party, since he wants to have his hair like that during the event. Anna, Stephen's wife, tells Steve that he loves Bob's hair like that, as a way of supporting her son. But immediately, their daughter, Kim, chimes in, asking what about her hair? Is it pretty? Anna goes back to say everyone has lovely hair in their family. The scene moves to Stephen and Anna's bedroom. She is talking about what dress she will wear to an upcoming event they have, and she mentions a black dress that Stephen likes very much. He compliments her, saying everything looks good on her. And while you would say this is such a loving marriage, everything feels stale. Like they are saying the right thing because it is the right thing to say, and not because they feel that way. And this staleness is confirmed in one of the scenes that had me looking away because of how uncomfortable it was. So Anna gets ready to have intimacy with Stephen. So she gets her robe off, revealing she was only wearing her underwear, and then she drops on the bed and acts like she has passed out. Or worse, she is dead. She asks him if she is okay in that position, and he affirms she is in the right position before moving and getting over her. And the scene ends there, thankfully. The next day, Martin shows unannounced to the hospital and Stephen hurries to talk to him, asking him to never show like that again. Martin apologizes but insists, telling him he wanted to show the new strap he got for the watch. You can see Stephen being moved and proceeds to ask about the clock, showing interest before sending Martin off. We cut to Stephen's house as he is giving his daughter his full attention since Kim is showing him just how much she had improved with her singing. On the other side, Stephen scolds Bob again because he has not watered the plants while Kim already walked the dog. Stephen scolds Bob till he leaves the room, done brushing his still long hair because he has not cut it like his dad asked. So at this point, we can see just how much Kim loved to be praised by her parents and just how obedient she is, while Bob can be a little more of a rebel, we can say. We move to the event that Anna and Stephen were talking in one of the first scenes of the movie. At this event, Stephen is speaking while the room stays in perfect silence listening to him. We cut after he speaks, where everyone now is enjoying the company of others. Larry, one of their friends, offers Stephen a drink but only offers one to him, despite more people being there. It's like Larry ignored them and only is attending to Stephen. Anna interferes then, saying Stephen stopped drinking 3 years ago and that they have surgery the next morning, so they should not be drinking anyway. Larry insists, ignoring Anna. And this time around, Stephen agrees with his wife. And this time around, now Larry doesn't insist anymore and accepts Stephen's decline. This just shows more of the dynamic Stephen has with the world. Everybody listens to him, nobody ignores nor tries to push against him. We move to the next scene. We see Steven and Martin walking along the same river again. This time around, Steven decides to invite Martin to have dinner at his house so he can get to know his family. Martin arrives with flowers in his hands, complimenting Anna, and hands gifts for both Bob and Kim. They have dinner and we jump straight to the three kids talking at Kim's room. Martin asks if he can smoke and Bob quickly says no, but Kim says yes, but he needs to do it next to the window. In here, what is interesting is that Kim has been shown as the more obedient child, right? Like I mentioned. But in here, we kind of see she's obedient when her parents will know what she's doing. But the moment she can go behind their back, she will, and the one who will obey their rules no matter if their parents are there or not is Bob. Now, I mentioned this because it will be important later. Martin asks if they want to take a walk, and the only one who agrees is Kim, whose interest has been obviously caught by Martin. These two end up sharing a moment as Kim sings to Martin and he listens very attentive. They go back to the house where everyone reunites. In here, Martin mentions that since his dad is gone, he doesn't like to leave his mother alone for a long time. Anna says then that she would love to meet his mother. Like any other scene in this movie, this exchange ends kind of abruptly and we move to the next scene. We are now in Steven and Anna's room. She is flossing as she compliments Martin for being a nice boy and then asks Steven how his dad died. He tells her Martin's dad died in a crash. He went straight into a pole and died instantly. Anna then has a follow-up question. How did Steven know the dad? Steven answers that they were friends from long ago. So Anna asks again, why wasn't she there with Steven at the funeral then? Steven says she was busy that day or something and couldn't make it with him, perfectly covering his lies. Steven receives a call from Martin, wanting to thank him for the invitation, and now he wants to invite Steven into his home to have dinner with him and his mother. Steven says they could do that someday, and Martin quickly states the invitation is for the next day and doesn't give him a chance to discuss the invitation and twists his hand into going the next day. We don't see much of the dinner with Martin and his mother, but we catch up to them once they are done and Martin proposes the idea of watching a movie all together. Steven turns down the invitation, mentioning his wife is waiting for him at home soon. Both the mom and Martin insist he should stay a little longer, and Steven finally complies. However, in the middle of the movie, Martin claims he is too tired and wants to go to bed. He says goodnight and leaves Steven alone with his mother. Once they are alone, the mother starts talking about Steven's hands, telling how she has always thought he has beautiful hands. She then asks Steven if he remembers her from the hospital, and visibly uncomfortable, he says he does remember her. The mother keeps up flirting and asks if she can have a look at his hands. She doesn't take her time anymore and instead she goes straight to get his finger into her mouth. Startled, Steven stands up and starts grabbing his things. The mother says she won't let him go till he has tasted some of her tartlet. He refuses and rushes out of the house. The next day, when Steven goes to his office, Martin is already there waiting for him. Steven asks why he isn't at school and he says he is having chest pains and he is worried about his heart. Steven tells him he is too young to have a heart disease. Martin counters that Steven said the same thing about his father and he still died. With these two last scenes, we find out Steven lied to Anna. Martin's father did not die instantly nor in a car crash, and Steven had much more to do with his death. Martin keeps going, listing how his father was an incredibly healthy guy and had everything to come out of his surgery alive, but he still died. Steven stays quiet, and then we cut to Martin running in a treadmill as they do some studies on him. When they are done with the tests, Martin invites Steven to have dinner again tonight. Steven declines and Martin keeps insisting. He says his mother would be very disappointed because she really likes Steven. She is attracted to him, and Martin personally thinks his mother is very beautiful and has a nice body. He even adds that her and Steven would make a great couple, so he should stop by to have dinner. Steven, now a bit more fed up, states that he is sure Martin's mother is a beautiful woman, but he is a happily married man and he loves his family. So there is no chance anything would happen with Martin's mother. He ends up the conversation telling Martin he is beyond healthy and there's nothing wrong with him. On the next scene, Steven is with a friend while we hear a phone call with Martin. Steven didn't meet up with him like he usually does, and Martin is going on and on about how he is in the usual dinner and he saved him a slice of apple pie. Martin starts insisting even more, saying he can see Steven somewhere else if he can go to the dinner. He asks again and again what is so important for Steven to miss their meeting, but at the end, Steven turns him down completely. Steven goes back to his friends and his wife, and Anna asks him what was he doing. He says that he was in a phone call, but doesn't let her in into the details. He avoids mentioning that he was talking to Martin. Larry tells Steven that earlier he saw Martin waiting around his car at the hospital, waiting for him. Steven waves off the comment, saying it was impossible for it to be Martin, then asks his friend to take out his fish from the grill, completely ignoring the topic. Later that day, Steven is back home. Kim arrives home late, and Steven asks her where has she been. She tells him she was at choir practice and that Martin took her home on his friend's motorcycle. Steven is quick to tell her he doesn't want her to ride a motorcycle without a helmet. She tells him that she was wearing one. Martin lent her his. Steven asks why she didn't invite Martin in, and she says she did, but Martin declined, saying he was in a hurry. Kim leaves Steven alone to go to her room, and then Steven calls Martin, and it is revealed that Martin was in no hurry really, because he's sitting on his bike outside of the house. We hear his phone ringing and he takes it out, seeing that it is Steven calling. Martin shuts the phone and shoves it back into his pocket, not answering the call. It is in here when we start seeing the true shift in power between Martin and Steven. Till this point, it was all about Steven controlling when and where Martin could see him or call him. Now it is Steven looking for Martin and Martin rejecting him. The next morning, everyone in the family is at the kitchen except Bob, so Steven goes to his room to rush him. In there, Bob is sitting on the bed still in his pajamas, and he informs his dad that he cannot get up. After some exchanges, Bob declares his legs are not working and Steven finally believes him. So, the two of them together with Anna rush to the hospital. Here is when things start to spiral. As Steven and Anna spend the entirety of the day at the hospital, Kim does the opposite of what his father told her. She is riding the motorcycle with Martin without helmets. And not only that, but the next day, when Steven and Anna arrive to the hospital, Martin is already there visiting Bob and with the intentions to talk to Steven. After a little insisting, Steven agrees and joins Martin at the cafeteria. There, Martin gives him a Swiss Army knife. Steven is thankful for the gesture, but tells Martin he needs to go back with his son. Martin understands and says, "Even if you've been devoting less and less time to me lately." The language used here is important. He used the word devoting. Devoting is something you do for something you cherish a lot, something that holds a lot of value, or is a word used usually in religious settings, a word that you will use when you are saying that you are praising a god, you are devoted to a god. Martin then tells Steven that what Bob has is indeed serious since it is time for Steven to pay what he owes. Martin quickly tells Steven that since he took a member from his family, it is only fair he also takes a member of his own family. So, Steven needs to kill one member of his family. It doesn't matter who, but he has to choose and soon. If he doesn't, one by one all of his family will get sick and eventually die. It starts with Bob, the youngest, then it will move to Kim, and lastly to Anna, his wife. The first symptom is losing their ability to walk, then losing their appetite, and the last symptom is bleeding from the eyes. Once they reach the stage of bleeding eyes, they will die in a matter of hours. We cut to Martin being escorted out of the hospital and Steven returning to the room with Bob and Anna. He asks his wife if Bob has eaten anything, and Anna says that he hasn't. Inevitably, Steven starts getting nervous to the point he horribly forces Bob to chew on a donut, but he spits it out. Steven panics even more and orders Bob to finish the entire box of donuts in 5 minutes before he comes back to the room. While this happens, Kim is cuddling with Martin, completely unaware of the situation at the hospital. They are casually talking when she suddenly stops, stands up, and takes off her dress before laying down on the bed completely still, just like her mother does whenever she has intimacy with Steven. She has been raised like that, being submissive to her father's orders. So it makes sense that the first time she wants intimacy with someone, she practically offers herself like that. If we connect this with the whole sacrifice theme of the movie, she is literally offering herself to Martin, who is showing to be some kind of god over the family, with the whole thing about making the family sick until Steven decides who to kill. Martin calls Kim the prettiest girl he has ever seen, but instead of indulging, Martin rejects Kim, saying he needs to go. Kim questions him, saying they can just listen to music, but Martin insists that it is late and he needs to head back home to his mother. Kim asks him if he's angry at her, and he kind of snaps at her. And I say kind of because one characteristic of the film is that the characters are always soaking monotonal, with no emotions. Martin tells Kim to not be stupid. He clarifies that he is not mad at Steven, that he feels sorry for him actually, and that he is being honest when he says that he needs to go because it's getting late. Kim apologizes and says that she loves him a lot. With a soft caress as a goodbye, Martin finally leaves. At the hospital, Anna and Steven are faced with the harsh truth that they had run out of tests for Bob, and that they need to start looking at a psychosomatic disorder. This is suggested by Anna, but Steven refuses to be wrong and orders another round of exams done to Bob. He is starting to lose his characteristic collected persona. He even tells Anna that she is just an ophthalmologist, that if there was an issue with Bob's sight, then he would be listening to her, but that Bob is paralyzed from both legs, so he doesn't need her opinion. Then he grabs Bob from his wheelchair and tries to force him to walk, to the point that he drops him to the floor. Things only get worse from here. As Kim is practicing with the school choir, she suddenly can't stand up anymore. Slowly but surely, Martin's threat becoming true. And with Kim, the symptoms seem to be faster, as it becomes impossible for her to eat anything shortly after she loses the ability to walk. That same evening, Steven goes to Martin's house incredibly furious, threatening to make Martin rot in jail. But no one ever answers the door. Once Steven is back with his family, he is confronted by Anna, who is asking again how old was Martin's dad when he died, and then asks her husband if he had been drinking the day that he did surgery on him. He quickly says that the man had a stroke. Anna corrects him, telling him she asked if he was drinking, not how the father died. Steven reveals he had been seeing Martin for the past 6 months, meeting with him by the river and claiming he has some serious psychological issues and they need to go to the police. With this, we know that Steven has finally come clean to his wife about what Martin told him about his kid getting sick. We also know that Steven has also come clean about the fact that he was doing surgery on Martin's dad when he died. Anna says telling the police won't make a difference and asks him again if he had been drinking the day he did surgery on Martin's dad. Steven says that he did a little, but that he wasn't responsible of Martin's dad dying on the table. He never makes a mistake. He has never killed a patient. Steven is slowly reaching rock bottom. He sits down naked and wet on a chair in his bedroom. The light gray and dull, the bed unmade, and a towel on the floor. We go back to the hospital, where Anna is alone with her kids when Martin calls Kim at her phone. Till this point, Martin's curse is starting to be very believable, but as a way to showcase just how real his powers are, if we need to give a name to his curse, he tells Kim that he is outside the hospital in the parking lot and that she should get up and take a look at him. Kim tells him that she cannot because, well, she is paralyzed. But Martin tells her she can walk to the window, to give it a try, and miraculously, Kim stands up and walks. She cannot see Martin in the parking lot, but still waves in case he can see her. As soon as their conversation is done, Kim starts walking back to her bed and falls down, unable to walk again. It takes Anna 2 seconds to start believing in Martin's threat after what she saw, and so she forbids Kim to ever talk to Martin ever again. Finally understanding if her kids are in their current state, it's because of him. And to this, Kim says a very silent "fuck you" to her mom. We have seen through the movie just how obedient Kim acts to be in front of her parents, but as we have seen, we know better. We know that she feels very okay to disobey them. And here we can see the start of the peak of her rebellion against them. It's like she sees her parents as false gods and holds Martin above them now. We can argue that she's a teenager in love, and it is normal for them to act like that. But given the themes of the movie, it is more fitting to see Kim as a sheep who has been straying from the group, away from her family, and now she is following a new god. Anna does not stand still and goes to see Martin. She tells him she is aware of what happened with his father. Martin then asks if Steven has also told her about his mother and proceeds to explain, "Ever since your husband killed my father, he's been flirting with my mom. Constantly flirting." We know this is a lie, and here we understand that Martin's initial plan was to have Steven be with his mother and take the role of his father, as if trying to compensate the absence. But it's just more evidence of the sinister person Martin has always been. Anna ignores Martin's rant about Steven and his mom and goes back to the topic of the kids, saying if Steven made a mistake, why does she have to pay the price by Martin hurting her kids? Martin ignores her back and starts talking about his dad again, but here comes a little metaphor, in my opinion, of course. In this part, Martin tells Anna how he thought his dad ate the spaghetti in a unique way and felt special when people told him he ate spaghetti just like him. But later in life, he discovered everyone eats spaghetti the same. For me, this is Martin telling Anna why everyone in the family has to pay for what Steven did. Because in some way, all of them would hide what they did or get on Steven's side. They're not different nor special, they're just like Steven. He recognizes that he doesn't know if it's fair what he's been doing to her family, but it is the only thing he can think of close to justice. We go back to Anna and Steven, and they are told there's nothing else they can do for the kids and they will be sending them home. Anna doesn't feel satisfied, so she goes to the only person left, Larry, the anesthesiologist and the other person present in the room when Steven did surgery on Martin's father. They meet for a coffee and Larry insists that he cannot give Anna the records or any confidential information about any patient, including Martin's father. Anna then offers to do a special favor, and by this I mean a sexual favor. It is then when Larry confirms to Anna that Steven had been drinking before the surgery and that it was him the one who made a mistake. And in here, he tells Anna exactly what Steven told her before, but the roles are turned. You see, back at the parking lot where Anna was confronting Steven about what happened during surgery on Martin's dad, when Steven told her that he has never made a mistake, he said the phrase that it is never the surgeon's fault, but is always the anesthesiologist's fault. And here, Larry says that the anesthesiologist is never to blame if something bad happens to the patient. It is always the surgeon's fault. So as always, Steven is twisting the reality, twisting everything around him just so he can stay in this place of power, in this place where he is never wrong. We cut to the kids that are now at home, and Steven and Anna made a makeshift hospital room with 2 beds and medical supplies all around. At the kitchen, Steven praises Anna's cooking just like everything is normal. He even tells her he is craving mashed potatoes and that they should go to the beach house for a change of scenario and some fresh air. During this, Anna has been staring intensely at him, and instead of complying to him, she begins talking about how beautiful his hands are, calling back to the conversation she had with Martin when he told her about Steven and his mom. Anna finally snaps, and for the first time we see real emotion in her. She calls Steven an incompetent man who wants to go to the beach and have mashed potatoes when their 2 children are dying in the next room. She says to Steven that he should go and live with Martin's mother if he wants to be treated better. Steven snaps then, asking her what else does she want him to do. Anna states, "To fix this, it is your fault we are in this problem." Steven then goes crazy, turning the kitchen upside down. He knows there's a solution, but it's not an easy one at all. And he also knows that yes, it is indeed his fault, but he won't admit it. He'd rather trash the entire kitchen and make Anna feel bad before he admits he is wrong. Later at night, he apologizes. He insists that if Martin was telling the truth, she would be paralyzed too. Anna, being very sarcastic, agrees and says that he should just wait till all of them are dead to do something. So Steven does do something, and that thing is kidnapping Martin. Steven beat him to a pulp and took him home. After showing Anna what he has done, Steven orders Anna to bring some of that lemonade Martin likes so much. In this conversation, Steven accuses Martin of being a murderer, but Martin reminds Steven of his father, as if saying, the only murderer here is you. And Martin continues telling Steven that the best he can do is just do as he said, and after he murders someone in his family, everything will get better. Steven loses his temper and hits Martin on the face, and in exchange, Martin bites Steven. Martin asks Steven if he thinks that it is fair that now he is hurt, so Martin goes ahead and bites himself too. Now both of them have bite wounds. This as to set an example of what he wants from Steven. While this is happening, Anna is cleaning Steven's trunk since there was some of Martin's blood left on it. Again, just like with Steven's negligence when doing surgery on Martin's dad, someone here is covering up for him. Both times, people should have stepped up and exposed Steven, but they do not oppose his authority, they cover up for him. Back with the kids, Kim now is smoking too, and is telling Bob their dad didn't kill Martin, which was the best decision because it wouldn't have changed anything. Instead, Martin would be dead and Steven's entire family would die too, ending up in 4 people dead. Kim says that she is going to live with Martin and she apologizes to Bob, assuring him that their dad loves them but that he has no other choice, implicating Bob is the one who's going to get killed, the sacred deer. Then, Kim asks Bob if she can have his MP3 player once he is dead. After this comes one of the most heartbreaking scenes. You see, in the start of the movie we watch how Bob never fulfilled his parents' orders. He never cut his hair nor watered the plants. So, after hearing his sister tell him that he is the one who is going to be sacrificed, he crawls on the floor and in the kitchen he starts cutting off his hair, and then crawls to his dad to show he finally cut it. This is Bob trying to fall into his dad's good graces. At the start of the movie, Steven was praising Kim while reminding Bob of how disobeying he was. Now, Bob has finally bent to Steven's will. He will do everything he has to, so his dad chooses to keep him and not Kim. Bob tells Steven he now will water the plants and that he wants to be a cardiologist just like him. After this, Steven sits outside and surrounded by darkness, he starts crying. In the next couple of days, just like the frivolous and analytical couple that they are, Anna and Steven go to their kids' school and begin asking their teachers about the kids' performance at school, as if trying to see which one is the best, which is worth keeping. In a desperate attempt at mercy, Anna approaches a more sensitive tactic. She takes care of Martin's wounds and she brings Bob and Kim with her, practically at his feet, begging him for mercy. Like a regular person would ask a god, begging with her head on the floor and kissing his feet. Before they leave, Martin warns Anna that they need to make a decision since Bob is going to die soon. With this scene, we can see what makes Steven so different from his family. All of them are willing to say sorry, to follow Martin, and mend things with him, hoping their kindness will convince him to forgive their family. But the problem isn't Anna or the kids. The problem is Steven and his ego, unwilling to accept fault and unwilling to make things better in any way. At this point of the movie, Steven has not admitted to any wrongdoing about Martin's father, if you noticed. Now, here is when it comes the interesting part. Remember how Bob cut his hair and promised to do his chores as to sway his father's love to him and not to kill him? Well, Anna kind of does the same. Later that same day, she goes into her room with Steven, starts kissing his hand and then gets naked and lays still close to him, just like in the beginning, waiting for him to come to her. But Steven instead turns the light off and completely ignores Anna. Anna then crawls to Steven and says the most logical thing to do is to kill a child, and then they can have another. They are in age, so they can have another one. Steven doesn't say anything and then the scene ends. She's giving him reasons to keep her alive. At this point is when I realize Steven feels like a god, wants to believe he is like a god. And it is said surgeons and doctors sometimes play God since they can make a difference between who lives and who dies. So Martin gave Steven the chance to play a real god, one who chooses who dies and who lives. The last one to ask for mercy is Kim, but she doesn't go to her father. She goes directly to Martin. She tells him that they can run away together, but he has to make her healthy again. Her rant goes on, but Martin doesn't speak a word to her. He remains unmovable. Kim starts throwing stuff at Martin, and still, he doesn't react. And so, she tries to escape, dragging herself down the street till her legs are bleeding. Steven and Anna notice Kim is gone and bring her back home. Once back home under her father's care, Kim starts proclaiming her adoration for her father, trying to have mercy from him since now she understands Martin won't save her. That's why she had been so cocky all the time. She thought Martin loved her and he would not let anything bad happen to her. But now she knows she was wrong. The day when Bob's eyes start bleeding comes around, and Steven has officially run out of time. He has to take a decision. Or else Bob will die for absolutely nothing. And so Steven gathers everyone for his decision. And this decision is to tie up everyone, put bags on their heads so they cannot see anything, sit them in different points of the room, and then spin around blindfolded with a shotgun. He tries 3 times, and the 3rd time it hits Bob. The ending scene has Steven, Anna, and Kim reunited at the same diner where Steven and Martin used to see each other. They are having their food when Martin arrives. He walks past them, and so they stay for a moment more, but eventually the family stands up and walks out of the place, not without giving one last look at Martin. Kim is eating and walking again, like nothing happened to her, and then the movie ends there. As I said at the start, this is a movie so full of important details, it was impossible for me to exclude scenes, which is very rare. Usually I resume what happens in a scene, but in this one, even the dialogue proved to be necessary to include. Right from the start, the base plot of the movie is all in the title. The killing of a sacred deer is the Greek myth of Iphigenia, if I pronounce that correctly, one of the daughters of King Agamemnon. When the king kills a sacred deer belonging to the goddess Artemis, he is told by the goddess to sacrifice Iphigenia to make things right. In some versions, Artemis stops him right before he does it, proving his intentions to make things right, and in other versions, he indeed kills his daughter. The killing of a sacred deer plays the same themes, and actually, during the conversation Steven has with one of Kim's teachers, he mentions she made an incredibly essay about the myth of Iphigenia. Wink wink. In this world, Steven is treated like he is the one in charge of everything, almost like a false god. Whatever he says goes, and people around him admire him, waiting for his command. There is this scene where Steven and his wife Anna are in a party and she indicated it's late and they need to get up early, but their friend insists. But when Steven says that they are leaving because of the same reasons Anna just said, now his friend accepts it without hesitation. No one ever goes against Steven. But then, Steven is basically controlled by Martin once he puts down this curse on his family. And while Steven becomes aggressive, losing control, Martin stays calm. And going back to the myth of the sacred deer, it's almost like Steven is the king, acting like a false god, while the real god, the one in control, is Martin. Steven plays some type of false god, and he loses control when he realizes he no longer has the upper hand. Martin won't fall at his command like everybody else. Bob, being the first victim of this curse, is almost like the most innocent paying for the fault of the guilty. We can see Martin's father like this. He was a healthy man who should not have had heart complications, but thanks to Steven's irresponsibility, he died. And of course, something that I need to mention is that there is something that becomes quickly unsettling, almost like uncanny valley in this movie, and it is just how stale everything is. Everything is pristine and perfect, and even the way they talk is without emotion, and whenever there is emotion, it's like it doesn't belong in this world. For example, the coldness between Steven and Anna's marriage. She literally acts dead, so he gets turned on. He likes complete control. Everything is stale and controlled in here. And something that is never explained, it is how Martin can do this. It is almost like divine justice. Steven is a man of science and logic, so having a teenager control his life like that, and especially control it without a real explanation, breaks everything Steven's life is based on. He is genuinely confronted by something he cannot control because he doesn't even know what is happening. He just knows it's happening. And here I am addressing the theory that Martin poisoned the kids and that's how he knew what was going to happen. But Steven ran every possible test in existence twice on his kids. If the kids were poisoned by something strange would have come up in the tests, and it didn't. That was the whole deal. The kids were perfectly fine, so there was no physical reason for them to be sick like that. And that's why I am sticking with the theory that this was just like some type of divine justice, because there's no other explanation as of how Martin is able to do what he did. There is this interpretation of the film where it is said that Martin is symbolized by darkness. In the scene in the bathroom, we can see Anna and Steven moving in the darkness. When Kim tells Steven that Martin brought her home, in the corner we can see a dark room. And as our Martin declines the phone call from Steven, the entire house shuts down in darkness, meaning Martin has taken complete control of the family. However, I like to see darkness like keeping others in the dark, quite literally. In the same shot of Martin standing right before the house, it's because Martin knows Steven's biggest secrets. He knows Steven did a medical negligence which killed his father, but Steven has constantly lied about how things went, or even straight up never mentioning he was the doctor in charge of the surgery. He tells his colleagues Martin is one of his daughter's school friends and he has taken him under his wing. Martin is actively watching how easily Steven keeps his family in the dark, but Martin also has a big secret on his side. But well, that's just my theory about that. Without a doubt, The Killing of a Sacred Deer is one of the most interesting movies that I have watched. Till this day, people are still discussing and coming up with different theories about the movie. And so, I am very glad that I finally did this deep dive into this movie. So, what do you think? Did I miss anything? Let me know what you think about this movie. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I hope that you stay around for another one.